Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the pod. I am your host, Eric Brown, and once again joined in studio today with my wife, Ashley.
Hello.
All right. Well, today, as we're recording here, it is officially the start of September. So the beginning of fall, unofficially, I like to call.
Spooky season.
Yep. So our next subsequent episodes on the podcast are kind of be more like spooky related, so kind of haunting in a way.
Well, we recorded an episode which will air later about scary video games.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one. We had Jeremy on board, so we'll air that one probably, if not this month, definitely at the beginning of October. But, yeah, our next subsequent episodes for the podcast will kind of be like more down like a darker path.
Yeah.
More horror.
Because, like I said, it's spooky season.
Based on all that stuff. But one thing we were talking about before is having a podcast talking about fears. Primal fears, just fears and phobias that we had maybe growing up and stuff like that.
Yeah. Because we were talking about this one at like 2 o'clock in the morning about fears, and like this would be a good episode.
It's our random conversations we have in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, because we started talking about just how, this came about because we started talking about
the Uncanny Valley.
The Uncanny Valley. Mm-hmm. Which, if you guys don't know what Uncanny Valley is, it's where you're basically afraid of something that looks like humanish.
Yep.
But it's not.
Yeah, and it triggers something in your mind which just makes you feel very unsettled.
Let me look up Uncanny Valley. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Uncanny Valley is a concept that describes the feeling of unease or revulsion that people experience when they encounter objects or simulations that are nearly human but not quite.
For an example, that would be like what mannequins you'd see in a store. Mm-hmm. Or in video games or movies and stuff like that. Because I'm sure you've seen a lot of horror movies where they have like a mannequin scene which scares the crap out of everybody.
Well, we're probably going to do a whole other podcast on this, but I've been playing Hogwarts Legacy. Mm-hmm. And there is a side quest in Hogwarts Legacy where...
The shopkeeper quest?
I have no desire to do that quest ever again. It's not worth it, number one. The crap you have to go through, not worth it. Mm-hmm. But in that quest, you're being attacked by all of these mannequins.
And the screen's constantly going black. You turn on a light and all of a sudden you're just surrounded by mannequins that just weren't there before. Yeah.
Well, and that got me, we were talking too with the Uncanny Valley. One thing that makes me feel uneasy or freaked out is claymation sometimes.
See, I don't get that because I like Wallace and Gromit and all those things. But one of your big fears is Gumby of all things.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah. You like Coraline and Nightmare Before Christmas?
Tim Burton doesn't bother me.
Oh, it bothers me.
No, for some reason, Tim Burton does not bother me.
I think his stuff is weird. Like that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory remake. That was freaking...
Those don't bother me at all. But goddamn Gumby, I don't know what it is. Even when I was a kid... Like, I think, didn't Gumby used to be on Nick Jr. at one point?
Sounds vaguely.
I can't, but I would have to, like, look away or turn it off or something because it freaked me out for some reason.
Yeah.
And, like, same thing with Wallace and Gromit. I can't.
Wallace and Gromit's hilarious. So
no, it creeps me out.
Yeah. No, that doesn't bother me. Like, no, Coraline, that bothered me. With, like... Where people have basically like what the buttons sewn in or eyes and everything. That was just
it's freaky.
Up.
It's freaky, but I wasn't like scared of it.
To me, that was just weird. So unsettling. I keep on using.
And then there's me. I'm afraid of Gumby.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's just the movements. Mm-hmm. I can't.
How it's basically lifeless.
Well, then the other thing we were talking about, what freaks you out, and I love, it's one of my favorite childhood movies, is The Dark Crystal.
Yeah. For some reason, I don't get into that one. I like the Muppets and stuff like that, but yeah, when Jim Henson created The Dark Crystal, I could not get into that. It was just weird. And not to mention, like, the soul being sucked out of that one little critter. I'm like, What in the world is this movie?
See, I loved that movie growing up as a kid.
See, that one and Neverending Story kind of had a very similar feel to it.
And that's another one that I loved.
Yeah, like that. They both just seemed very strange to me. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and that it's so weird what certain people are afraid of and what others are afraid of.
Yeah. I'd say more like kind of like unbothered, or what's that, bothered by? It's just unsettling.
Well, that's like what I mentioned this in another podcast, but one of the things that freaks me out, it's a movie, and I brought it up before, it was the Fantastic Planet.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic Planet scares the shit out of me. I hate it.
See,
I hate it.
That
Ugh.
type of animation, wasn't it also very similar to like Monty Python?
Monty Python, the Yellow Submarine, which that also was unsettling to me. I don't know why.
I'll have to go back and watch that one. Actually, going back to my childhood, we actually had a cable system called Prime Star, and we used to watch like Nick at Night and like a bunch of the other Snick, I think they called it back then. And they had a TV show on there, I think, called Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh, man.
Yeah, that show.
A classic.
Yeah, that intro is still very gripping. But yeah, back then it was traumatizing. Actually, there was that one episode of, what is it, Drowning in the Dark or something like that, where there's this invisible creature under this forgotten school, like, natatorium.
Oh, yeah, it was in the pool.
That drug a kid to his death and drowned.
Yeah.
And for years after that, I literally could not go swimming. I'm just like, oh, there's probably some creature down there.
I remember the one where there was the girl who got stuck in a dollhouse.
Mm-hmm. I remember that one.
And then there was the one about Zebo the clown.
I remember Zebo. Mm-hmm. Tale of Laughing in the Dark.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. Those things were definitely not meant for kids, although they were targeted for kids. It was, ugh.
You know, so speaking of TV shows with eerie music, the one that I used to watch as a kid, especially late at night, was Unsolved Mysteries. Mm-hmm. That theme, the intro music at the beginning.
That was a freaky one.
Yes.
It's like, if you know anything about this, please be sure to call in.
I remember me and my cousin Heather would watch that. Like,
really?
She would come over and we would stay up late and watch Unsolved. It would always be on Lifetime. I remember it was on Lifetime. Unsolved Mysteries was.
Yeah, I used to watch a lot of scary movies over at Mark's house. We ended up watching, especially one called Hellraiser. Oh my God, that movie was just like, I mean, the special effects are probably very dated by this point, but it scared the crap out of me as a kid. I'm like, ugh.
You know what movies used to scare me was the Halloween movies with Michael Myers, which I know like they're kind of dated and probably not that scary, but again, it was more like suspenseful.
Yeah, those ones, like I said, Halloween really didn't like bug me all that much, but Nightmare on Elm Street did. Like, that is one of the biggest fears, is basically what? You can't go to sleep or Freddy Krueger is going to kill you in your dreams. It's just like, oh God, there's no escaping it. Now that used to scare the crap. And there's like a million of those movies, aren't there?
And then wasn't there Freddy versus Jason?
Mm-hmm. That came out during our high school years too. That was like all the hype. The movie thing turned out to be just kind of like, it was all right.
Yeah, I don't think I ever actually saw it. Mm-hmm. Wasn't there one like Jason in space or something? It was really
like Jason
corny
X or something. Yeah.
Yeah, Jason X. He was in a spaceship. Oh God.
Jumping about 1,000 sharks there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, what other things? So we kind of got a little off topic, but we started talking about like fears.
Yeah, things that you're like, afraid of, primal fears, just stuff that is unsettling and uncanny valley stuff. So
yeah. Oh man, I'm trying to think. One thing. Well, we talked about the claymation, how I'm weird with certain claymation things.
Mm-hmm. I remember for a while, I was actually bothered by the animated movie. I think it was James and the Giant Peach.
Oh, that's another good movie.
That weirded me out. Like that freaking rhino in the clouds. That thing was terrifying as a child.
So
I'm
cool.
like, what the hell? And the kid like eats a worm and turns into like this claymatic figure. I'm like, what is this movie? Yeah. And it's based off of like anything by, what is it, Roald Dahl? I think the guy who wrote Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and BFG.
Yeah.
Which also are very unsettling because like BFG is like some big friendly giant and all of his other giants.
I always say big fucking giant.
Yeah. And they go around and just like eat children out of, their homes and everything. It's weird.
Well, off of the topic of like movies and TV, one thing that I've always been afraid of, and I'm still afraid of to this day, is public speaking.
Yeah.
That's
a very common one with a lot of people.
I hate public speaking, which is funny considering the career I'm in. Mm-hmm. I hate it.
See, I'm used to it because I ended up taking college classes for like, we call it effective speaking. So we ended up having to give like presentations in front of a group of people and stuff like that.
Oh, see, class present. Oh, when I was in school, presenting something in front of the class, worst. I hated it. I would be nervous days before. Like, say my presentation was on Thursday, I'd start worrying about it on Monday, and I would be worried about it just for days. Same thing with at work. If I know I have to do a training or if I have to present something, I'm nervous about it all week. And I don't know why. I hate it.
Anxiety.
I've always been an introverted person. I think that's why, but...
Yep, you internalize about it and overthink it, which I do the same thing in a lot of ways.
Well, see, and you're the opposite. You have no problem getting in front of people.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that because, yeah, I still get nervous about these things and everything, but, like, I've had way more exposure and training with this type of stuff, and the more that you get, and that's actually a tactic for overcoming fear, too, is exposure. Like, getting exposed to your fear to help overcome it, to kind of, basically humanize the thing. So, kind of like, a good example of that's, like, the Batman series. You know, Batman's terrified of bats, and all of a sudden, he has this moment in Batman Begins where he's like surrounded in the Batcave by all these bats, and he kind of just learns to live with the fear and overcomes it through exposure. That's the same type of thing with me with public speaking, because I ended up giving a recited speech in front of like 100 or like 500 people in a packed auditorium one time. I'm like, oh, okay. And then jumping out in front of like, what was it, the pre-show over at Playhouse Square?
We were at a play called The Goes Wrong Show.
Yeah, That Goes Wrong.
We were in the front row.
Front and center, and yeah, they saw me in my little Irish patch cap, and yeah, they pulled me up on stage for like a pre-show thing. And honestly, I just instinctively just jumped up like, all right, I'm in it.
That is my worst nightmare.
Really?
Being on stage in front of all of those people, absolutely not.
Yeah, but once again, I've had practice with that type of stuff too, because I was like in theater back in like my grade school days and everything like that, and I took on some pretty decent roles.
Well, here's the bad thing, like, my fear of public speaking is so bad that, like, even when we're playing games with friends where it's like, oh, you need to do improv or you need to pretend to present this, I won't do it.
Yeah.
And these are people I've known for years. I will not do it.
Kind of goes into a shell because I think you begin to get tripped up when you start listening to yourself, especially if you're giving a speech out there. You're like, ugh.
Well, there was that one time we were going to play that game. It's like, oh, yeah, you're going to improv this presentation. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to watch because even though I've known our friends for a long time, I don't want to do it. I have no interest. If I hear anything about like improv, presenting, project, no, not doing it. Sorry.
No, segueing off that thing, I think one of my bigger fears, believe it or not, it's actually, I got a bit of white coat syndrome. Anytime I go to a doctor's office,
you do have white coat syndrome.
Unsettled to the max. Because like just sitting there in that very quiet, blank room, like all the walls are either like this gray or white. It's very, like, almost like inmate-y in a way, where it's just like you're just sitting there just waiting for the inevitable, and they call you back. You don't know if you're going to get a shot or if they're going to do this to you or that and tell you some kind of news you don't want to hear, and you're just like, sitting there overthinking in your head. And it's like psychological torture to me. And it's like, ugh.
See, I have no problem going to the doctor.
Yeah, but dentist for you.
I don't like going to the dentist.
It's like the same thing though, isn't it? It's going for like you're going to some medical practice to get a procedure done.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. And like, but going to a doctor doesn't bother you. But like for me, going to a dentist, no problem. Get my teeth cleaned, feel fantastic. I always had a good time at a dentist and eye doctor too for wearing my contacts. Eye doctor is like super easy, except for the puffer machine.
I've never been to an eye doctor, so I don't know.
Definitely check it out because honestly, it's like one of the easiest like medical trips you could ever do. You just go there and they shoot that little puffer thing in your eye to test for like glaucoma or something. But that's not the only thing I guess you could get scared of.
The one medical thing that I am afraid of is needles. Well, not so much getting a shot. I don't care. That doesn't bother me. Like not like tattoo needles, not getting a shot, but getting blood drawn or needles going into vein.
Okay, now you have a fear of that, but the same breath you want to get a tattoo. That to me doesn't make sense.
I just said I'm not afraid of tattoo needles.
But that's what I mean. Like it's still a needle going and piercing into your skin.
But it's not going into a vein. I think it's the whole thing of going into a vein that weirds me out. But no, tattoos, I don't care.
Yeah. Different things for different people.
But yeah, like the one time I got my blood drawn, I literally almost passed out because I'm like, ugh.
See, I just recently went to go get my blood drawn the other day, and actually it's about, a couple weeks ago now, and had no problem. And I thought I would because I've heard stories like my dad passing out and, everybody being squeamish about that. And literally, I just kind of looked away and then kind of like quickly glanced over. I'm just like, oh, I'm getting blood drawn.
Here's the thing,
no biggie.
I'm getting queasy just talking about it. But if I ever have to go to a hospital and get like an IV placed in my hand or in my arm, I'm going to... Yeah.
Well,
I'm gonna lose it.
I did have a fear for a while about my brother Ryan when he went to go get he had to get an IV in his arm and they popped his vessel in the one. They're like, we have to go in the other one.
Stop.
Yeah. We got to go in the other one. So yeah. It just I think it just leaves a bruise or something like that when that happens.
No, you told me the story before it squirted out or something? Okay, I can't.
Nah.
I can't. I cannot. And here's the thing, a weird thing about me too. Gory things don't bother me.
Yeah.
Like
blood,
gore in movies, video games, don't bother me. But a little needle.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre type stuff, people getting hacked apart.
It doesn't gross me out. I mean, it's scary. But now maybe it would be different if I saw that type of stuff in like real life. But I just know it's fake, so it doesn't really bother me.
I'm trying to think of like which movies actually got like the biggest like scare factor out of me. I think one of the ones that was the most unsettling to me that literally had my heart pulsating and pounding like crazy was the movie of Robert De Niro called Hide and Seek.
I've never seen that.
That was super suspenseful for some reason. I was sitting in the theater and I'm just like, what the heck is happening right now? Like, it's the most freaked out I ever was in a movie. I'm like, this is strange, because I've sat through like horror movies and stuff like that, like seeing The Ring and everything. And you think that would be freaky, or The Grudge. But no, like Hide and Seek, for some reason, I'm just like, what the hell is going on?
I was just seeing this on TikTok. Supposedly, like, the most unsettling horror movie is called a Serbian film. And it's supposed to be like one of the scariest movies, like most disturbing movies. And a lot of people who say they really like horror movies don't even like that because it's that bad.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't really know if I have a desire to watch it.
And we're going to take a slight detour into another audiobook recommendation. So this is one of my more recent ones I just finished, but if you get a chance, check out on Audible now, The Alien Invasion Kid Stories book by A.O. Kunle Matthew Akinbi, and narrated by me, Eric Brown. It's a wonderful little children's book where I do tons of fun, goofy voices. So if you get a chance, definitely check it out. Now available on Audible today. And we're back to the pod.
Segueing off this to kind of incorporate a little bit into the one podcast where me, Sean, and Jared were talking about dreams and dream interpretations and stuff like that, meanings of dreams. There's a lot of fear-based dreams, too. And honestly, I feel like I've had more nightmares than I actually have good dreams.
See, I kind of wish I would have been on that podcast with you guys, because I've had a lot of freaky dreams.
You're more than welcome to join in. My goodness. We could probably have another, round table about that one, too, because I feel like dreams are a huge topic of conversation. So,
I mean, my one reoccurring dream that scares me is my teeth falling out.
And that's a stress-related dream.
I have that dream at least twice a month. At least.
I've had that one before just a few times, but I've had like apocalyptic dreams where like the moon crashes into the earth and everything, and yeah, many other things like that. And then I'm sure you've probably had the, even though we've been out of college for,
oh my God,
a long time now, like you still have dreams like, oh my God, I'm going to be late for class, or I've got a paper due that I haven't finished. And you wake up, you're like, oh yeah, I haven't been in school for years.
I will have reoccurring nightmares that I'm late for a marching band competition, or I go to a competition and I forgot my uniform, and I wake up in a panic. And I'm like, oh yeah, I graduated high school almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, like the last time I had a dream about school, I think I had a dream I missed a test or I was late for class. I literally woke up and I was like in a panic because I'm like, oh my God, I missed my class.
Yep.
I'm like, oh yeah, I'm 36 years old. I'm not in school anymore.
All right. Now, I think everybody has, though. I think it's a very human emotion to overfixate on that stuff, because it was such a pivotal moment in your life back then where it just still kind of sticks with you. It's like, oh.
Well, no, for me, it has kind of real world implications, because my very last class of my undergraduate career, I was late to. And I mean, I was really late. Like, I got to class as everybody was leaving. And I think that's why I have dreams like that to this day.
Yep. And like I said, that's only natural.
What were some of the other things we mentioned?
As far as fear?
Oh, we were talking about primal fears.
Stuff that's just like, okay, for you, it used to be spiders was a big fear for you.
Yeah, and as I've gotten older, I mean, I'm still not a huge fan of spiders.
Yeah.
But they don't scare me nearly as much as they used to.
Yep. And I'm starting to get that way with going to a doctor's office and stuff like that, where and not to mention, because now I'm in a doctor's setting as far as my job and everything.
Yeah.
Where I'm becoming more comfortable and it's almost kind of like disassociating a lot of that stuff, where it's kind of like, okay, it's not as scary as I originally thought it was. I'm sure you feel that way about spiders now.
Yeah, I mean, because being outside a lot and doing gardening and hiking and stuff, I mean, you're around bugs all the time.
Correct. I think it's still good to be mindful of what type of spiders are, because if you see a black widow or something, or a brown recluse, no, run.
Well, I've got that spider. I'm pretty sure this mark on my arm was a spider bite, and it's been here for months.
Right. I still got the same thing. I got a bite over my right arm. So that was remember how it bulged up?
Oh yeah, that was
3
weird.
Years ago. It was strange.
But I used to be really, really, really scared of spiders, and if I knew there was a spider in the room, I wouldn't go in there.
Not really too fond of snakes. I wouldn't know if I'd say I'm scared of them.
I love snakes.
Yeah, not overly fond of them. I actually don't mind rats.
I think rats are cute.
Although you feed them to snakes, so.
Or they eat mice.
That was one of the biggest misnomers about the bubonic plague, too, is people thought it was like people were getting disease from the rats. No, it was the flea that would basically hop on board the rat. It would go around and infecting people with the bubonic plague. That's a big one to kind of touch into, too, as far as fears, is pandemics.
Or just illness in general.
Yes. Like, okay, because now we hear about, like, the whole thing of, like, what the rise of monkeypox or something like that, or whatever they're going to call it now. But after just getting through COVID and everything, I'm sure everybody's kind of like on pins and needles, like, oh my God, what's the next pandemic that's on the horizon?
I know there's some people, even after COVID, like, I mean, we won't get into that rabbit hole, but I know there's still some people that are still deathly afraid of getting ill because of all of that.
Yeah. Well, I got a family member that still, like, even is reluctant to leave their house because they're so paranoid about, like, you know, what all has gone on during the pandemic. And it's just sad. It was one wild time. And I remember, my high school actually had, back when I was in 6th grade, actually had a bacterial meningitis outbreak, which shut down all the schools and all the surrounding areas. And it was just a wild time. But segueing into a whole different topic here, too. I think one type of fear that a lot of people are kind of scared of is the fear of being forgotten. That's a huge one with a lot of people.
See, and that, like I talked about this earlier, like, I've never worried about that because in the long run, if you think about it, we're all going to be forgotten at some point or another. It's kind of inevitable.
It took me a while to kind of come to that realization, too, because I did have that for the longest time where it's kind of like, you want to create a legacy for yourself and, like, do something that's going to be like a landmark achievement that's going to benefit the world and get your name up in lights, or just, that you will be a historical footnote of importance. And really, you begin to realize, like, if that happens, great. If not, who cares? Because over the course of, like, think about 3,000 years from now, is anybody going to be remembered?
That's what I mean. Yeah, at some point, everybody's going to be forgotten.
Yeah. And when you have, like, an internal conversation with yourself, you really begin to come to a sense of, like, at peace with yourself. And you're like, you know what? I'm just here to kind of live my life. And life begins to get a lot easier when you start, kind of shedding those, like, kind of irrational fears after a while.
Speaking of irrational fears, I have a few irrational fears.
Such as?
Okay. my KitchenAid mixer.
Oh, falling on your toes?
I have an irrational fear that I'm going to drop my KitchenAid mixer on my foot and break my foot.
Right. That's why half the time I usually have to lug that thing around between the closet and back out in the kitchen. But yeah, that thing weighs, like, it's pretty heavy. Yeah. It's about, like, at least 50 pounds, if that. Like, it weighs about as much as one of my big dumbbells.
That's another good topic, irrational fears.
Mm-hmm. We can dive more into that stuff, too.
Well, okay, another irrational fear I have, where I work in our kitchen, there's a big walk-in freezer. Mm-hmm. I'm always terrified that I'm going to get locked in the freezer.
And you've heard stories of that, too, where people, like, working in, like, big convenience stores or supermarkets get, like, locked in the freezer. Because I remember working at Target, too. Like, they have that emergency button. You have to press that sucker in. If that thing doesn't work, you're in there.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing you could do. And that's freaky. And it's cold in that freezer, too. Yeah, that is, ugh. Now I think about it. Ooh.
Yeah, literally, I hate, if I have to go in that freezer for anything, I have my phone with me, and I make sure it's either propped open or somebody is holding the door open, because I'm like, I don't want to get stuck in here.
Yeah, freaky stuff.
Yeah, I always have that irrational fear.
I've always had kind of like a little bit of fear of flying in a lot of ways, too. I'm still very uncomfortable getting on airplanes. I guess that's a fantastic fear of mine. Like, to me, it's very unsettling. And I've also had dreams, too, of, like, plane accidents and plane crashes, too. I mean, you've seen videos and footage of all this stuff. TikTok doesn't do much to quell those fears either. But I still get on planes because, like, if you want to travel, like, across the country and, like, go overseas and stuff like that, you got to get on a plane. So, and I guess another one, too, I used to have this dream about, like, being on board the Titanic in a sealed, locked-off room while it's sinking. So you'd be a mile underwater in a locked room with water slowly pouring into a locked, confined space. You mentioned this too, claustrophobia. Mm-hmm. Claustrophobia underwater, to me, is just freaky at the thought.
That reminds me of somebody I work with. She's in her 70s. And when she was younger, when she was like 12, 13 years old, she almost drowned when she was swimming in a river. And to this day, she does not like the feel of water on her head. Like when she doesn't like taking showers because she doesn't like the feeling of the water hitting her head. Mm-hmm. So like she has to take a bath so her head doesn't get under. And interesting. Yeah, she's still, to this day, she is still afraid of water. Like I don't think she goes swimming like at all. Like if she goes like to the ocean, she doesn't get in anything like that because she's still terrified to this day.
My mom's kind of like that. I don't know if she has a fear of the water, but she never gets in the water.
I know.
Weird? Yeah. So I don't know.
I've always wondered that if she was afraid of the water
or had some type of traumatic experience of sorts. So because usually people who don't like to associate with certain things, obviously it kind of points to a trauma response.
Well, I'm wondering too. Like there are a lot of people that are like genuinely terrified of the ocean. And like going in the ocean.
See, I feel like you should be more precautious and like more like a little bit more fearful of the ocean because when you jump in the water, you have no fear. You've stood in the middle of like a fever of stingrays swimming around you.
Yeah.
If you would have fell in, I mean, you've been covered in stingrays. It's not a good thing.
They're more scared, and they were the little guys, not like.
But still, like the fact that happened, and then the other thing I worry about too, because you go way out to the sandbar half the time when we're out in Florida.
Yeah.
I worry about riptide. Like
it wouldn't be that far out.
No, but still, like you never know with a riptide, you can get sucked way out there. So, and then you by that point you're probably too exhausted to swim back. Because I've been trapped under a wave before, and that's freaky. Like my brother and I were on a raft over in the Atlantic, just kind of sitting there in the surf, and this big wave came up, and basically Ryan was in the raft, basically went 90 degrees and landed on top of me, and I was kind of pinned underneath him in the raft, underwater, just sucking up water, going, and yeah, just kind of had to use all my strength to just burst above the surface. It was freaky.
That is scary. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was at North Carolina, I think I was like 6 or 7 years old. My dad and I were playing in the surf, and I think like we got knocked over by a wave, and then my dad ended up rolling over me, and I kind of felt myself getting sucked in, and I think I started crying because I got scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ocean's definitely a terrifying thing.
See, I love the ocean, but I also, you do have to be cautious.
And that's why I'm a little bit reluctant about like the whole thing with cruises too, because like, okay, we've seen the Titanic how many times too?
I know, but it's a lot different nowadays.
Yeah, you'd think that, but actually I ended up watching a few things about, you ever hear of the show The Deadliest Catch?
Yeah. They
talked about like how there's like groups of fishermen on certain boats, stuff like that. There's a phenomenon out in the oceans called rogue waves, where literally like they ended up getting a radio call one day just saying, yeah, this entire fleet got wiped out. No one's heard from them. There was no emergency call, nothing. And there's a bunch of people in the comments section of this thing just saying, yeah, it's a rogue wave. Just this giant like monster of like 20 to 50 footer coming out of nowhere, engulfing the ship, and you have no chance to react in the middle of the night.
Oh, God. That would be, ooh.
And that can happen to a cruise ship, if you think about it. And that's what gets me. I'm like, oh my God, the rogue wave phenomenon is freaky. So that's about the only thing that kind of deters me from a cruise ship.
Okay, most cruise ships go... I mean, they don't go to the same areas that those Deadliest Catch people go to.
Well, that, plus they have to deal with freezing water up there, too. Although, there are cruise ships that go to Alaska, so they go through that freezing water. And icebergs, don't they?
Yeah.
Because they're around Alaska, so, I don't know. Freaky stuff, man. I mean, if you were on a cruise ship and you start seeing water come down the hall, wouldn't you be a tad bit worried?
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially ice water. Because we've been to that Titanic museum, how cold that water was.
Yeah, because they
dip your hand in.
Yeah, because so we went to the Titanic exhibit in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and they literally had a section where you could go and put your hand in the water, and it was the exact temperature that the people in the Titanic would have been in. Mm-hmm. Oh my God!
Yeah, your hand goes numb within seconds.
And then
it's wild.
I could only imagine the fear, but then part of me wonders, like, you had to have been so cold that to me. I mean, you probably wouldn't think about fear. It would just be you'd feel the cold.
Well, it's that, but I think the one Titanic survivor, they actually had an interview on YouTube if you ever want to go check it out. I think it was more the darkness more than anything, because as soon as the lights cut out in the Titanic, you couldn't see anything. And it was just, you just heard the screams, and you just heard like the metal just kind of like
the
buckling.
Creaking, yeah.
And then like you just hear screams, and all of a sudden after about 10 minutes, no screams anymore. And there's just like dead people floating in the water.
Ugh.
Yeah. Ugh. And then we turned that into a movie and like make board games out of it.
We had a Titanic party one time.
It's like, oh my God. Yeah, you celebrate a travesty or a tragic event in history. Yeah. It's like, ugh. Very morbid.
Ugh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about that type of stuff, and it's just like, ugh.
I couldn't imagine being...
No, that's freaky stuff, man.
Okay, one thing that freaks me out kind of on the topic of primal fear. So I've seen these videos on TikTok lately of that guy. He was like climbing through these really small cave systems.
Oh, yeah.
And this mountain. And he literally was climbing through, and he got caught in this, like, basically this really tiny crevice, head first. I wish I could show you the picture. But I mean, literally, yeah, I mean, completely
Immobilized.
upside down,
Pinned into this little crevice.
That
Claustrophobia, yeah.
That terrifies me. That absolutely terrifies me.
I've seen that, and like the thing with miners being trapped like underground of like a tunnel collapse, that's freaky. And then also the divers that go down through those really intricate caves where there's only like a certain number of like oxygen pockets.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen so many of those videos. It's just like,
yeah, my claustrophobia is like, nope.
Because not only do you have to worry about like trying to traverse the tunnels in darkness while underwater, and then you have to worry about oxygen level. So why do people do this?
I don't know.
They put themselves through all this stuff. It's like,
yeah, no thanks.
You have the option of not doing that.
No, thank you.
Gosh, it's freaky stuff out there.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, instead of being in caves, I'm kind of afraid of heights.
I have a little bit of that too.
Not so much. My dad is like severely afraid of heights. Yeah. Very, very afraid of heights. Like, I remember one time we were hiking at Mohican State Park, and they have like a newer trail, and you're high up. Like, you are very, very high up.
Oh, yeah.
And the one trail was extremely narrow, and you could see straight down. And my dad's like, I don't think I could do this. I got to turn around. I'm like, no, we're going to do it. And he did it. But yeah, he's very afraid of heights.
Squeamish about heights, yeah.
Well, even the fire tower at Mohican State Park.
Those can be pretty high, too.
Yeah. Because every time I go there, I'm like, hey, you want to go up with me? And he won't go up with me.
No, completely understandable. Because, yeah, I do have a little bit of fear of heights, especially with, like, even roller coasters, a good time with that one. We'll get to that in a sec here. But actually, I used to work at Target where they had you in the back rooms. They had these big ladders that go about 2 stories high. So I kind of got used to, like, working with tall structures a little bit from dealing with that. And then I ended up taking on a bit of a, project manager of a construction company, like an assistant project manager role there. And I had to go up the scaffolding, like on a construction site, to go up to a roof that was 12 stories high.
Ooh.
These massive warehouse buildings. So you sit there and like it's all open when you're going up the scaffolding. You're just like, and you're like, basically white knuckling, holding up on the rails as you're going up each subsequent step until you get to the very top. And there's this little plank of a platform and a little safety gate. You have to sit there and kind of slowly maneuver around, and you're looking straight down, and it's like, whew, 12 stories to the ground, and there's just a massive, and then they got flag lines up where you can't go past the flag line within 6 feet, or unless you're tied off. But yeah, there's been plenty of construction workers that have just fallen. Yeah. And that's a very real fear. So
I could never skydive or bungee jump or anything like that.
I don't know how people do it. That's just, whew.
I could never.
We've been parasailing. Parasailing's fun because I feel like even if the cable were to snap, you're still on that little parachute, and it would
you're on a parachute,
and you're wearing a life vest.
Yeah, so you're fine. But yeah, parasailing's actually really relaxing to me.
Yep.
But bungee jumping and skydiving, absolutely not.
How about what's the sky jump they have in Dubai, where you jump off the top of that building in the middle of the city?
Nope.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance, check it out on YouTube. Just like Dubai, like sky jump. It's wild.
Nope. No, thanks.
Yeah, these people wear like those flying squirrel suits. You know what I'm talking about? That has like the big old webbing in between, and they can just sit there and glide. Yeah, it's
to each their own. I think those type of people are definitely like adrenaline junkies for
thrill
sure.
Seekers.
Yeah,
and this is getting back to roller coasters too, because as a kid, I had a huge fear of roller coasters. Couldn't stand the things. Could never get on them. And then out of the blue, a guy named Ben back in high school, he ends up tricking me about the rock and roller coaster down at MGM Studios, now Hollywood Studios, and over Disney World. And he convinced me because it was an indoor coaster. He's like, oh, Eric, there's no loops, there's no twists, it's just all bunny hops. You're going to be fine. He was such full of shit. It was nothing but corkscrews and flips and everything. And they jettison you out at like, oh my God, it was like, 40 to 50 miles an hour to the song of Aerosmith. Going like, 3, 2, 1, go! And you're like, oh shit!
Didn't we go on that one?
We did years later, but that really kind of helped me get over my fear of coasters. And I basically chewed out Ben and I was done. I was like, you freaking liar! But honestly, yeah. Because after that, I ended up riding the Raptor over at Cedar Point and Dueling Dragons, which became Dragon's Challenge over at Universal.
Yeah.
So it's in part of the Harry Potter park. And I think I took you on that one. And
I went on that one. I went on that one with my dad, I think.
Yep. That's one of the last coasters you went on, I think.
Yeah, because I will ride certain roller coasters, but I'm kind of a weenie when it comes to roller coasters. Like the Millennium Force at Cedar Point, that will never happen.
See, I've rode that one both during the day and at night, and I swear it's weird because you're going up that thing and it's 400 feet tall, and you get about halfway up, and all of a sudden the crank kicks up even faster because you're going to like click, 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 and all of a sudden you get halfway and it's like click, 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 and it just, before you know it, you blink your eyes, you're over the top and you're like, okay.
See, I think, funny enough, I think I would probably do better at night on a roller coaster because it's dark and you really can't see how high up you are.
Oh, you feel it though, because you are pinned to your seat as you're going down a Millennium Force. You're like,
but what was the one? Disaster Transport, the one that was inside.
The inside coaster.
I loved that one. Mm-hmm. I love Space Mountain because but those are like inside and you can't see how high you were.
Space Mountain's kind of like a little bit anxiety inducing too because you never know if there's going to be a drop because you're in complete darkness. You're like, what the heck?
But I kind of like that because again, I can't see how high. Oh, the Mummy Coaster.
Mummy Coaster is pretty cool. That's kind of a very dated one though. It's based off of the Mummy movies of Brendan Fraser. They got that at Universal Studios Florida, and I think they closed the one in California for that one. But it's a really cool little mini coaster. It's kind of like you're in a big cart with about 12 people. And it takes you through like various scenes of the mummy and everything. And like the roof catches on fire. It's really cool.
The one roller coaster that, nobody can go on it now was the Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. I had absolutely zero interest.
I thought they replaced it with something else, didn't they?
I don't think it's open yet. But another reason why I'm afraid of roller coasters, the Top Thrill Dragster, didn't a piece of the coaster fly off
and like hit somebody?
And hit a lady in the head?
I've heard that. I don't know if that's a confirmed story or not.
Oh, yeah, it is. That's why they shut down the coaster. Yeah, because literally a piece of it fell off and hit her in the head.
One thing I do know is they had a series with, I think his name is Bert Kirshner, where he did he went around to various theme parks, stuff like that, and he talked about like how there was this one phenomenon called a rollback that happened on the Top Thrill Dragster where you would go and hit the max speed of 120 miles an hour in order to get over that little crevice that like you go straight out and then go up, twist a little bit, and then try to go over that big top of that U they have there.
It's basically a 90-degree angle, right?
But yeah, you shoot off at just the right trajectory, and sometimes early in the morning, sometimes that speed isn't enough to get over it, and there's a rollback, and you come back down the same track you went up on instead of going completely over. And you got to do it all over again. And he's just freaking out. You just see him up there, and he's like, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. And he's just freaking out. You could tell he hates it. And I would have been the same way. I would have just absolutely stomach would have been in my mouth. No way.
I'm just thinking, SpongeBob, especially at a 90-degree angle.
And that's basically Top Thrill. Yeah, you basically go 90 degrees straight up.
But that was the coaster that I was absolutely terrified of. There's no way I'm going on this one.
I'm trying to think if I ever did ride Top Thrill. I don't think I did. I know I rode Millennium a couple times, and then the one I can't stand is Magnum. The Magnum XL200.
I don't think I ever rode the Magnum.
That thing, the crank took forever. You were basically like on that thing, going up that little slow-moving chain link thing for like a good minute. It's like click, 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 click. You go way up there, you're like, oh my gosh, this climb is ridiculous. It takes way longer than Millennium. Millennium, you're like, you down there, click, 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 click.
Well, yeah, because you're going up so high. It would take can you imagine how it would take forever?
Yep. I think at the top of Millennium, you can actually see Canada across the lake, which is wild because how tall it is.
No, thank you.
But yeah, roller coasters, used to be a big fear of mine, but now I can kind of handle them a lot better.
I remember we were waiting in line for the Blue Streak at Cedar Point, and I was sitting there. Like, I was sweating, I was shaking, I guess I was pale. I was so afraid to go on this coaster. Yep. And by the time we were done, I'm like, oh, that actually was fun.
But once again, that's also exposure. So we're getting exposed to our fears, and you begin to overcome because it's like, you kind of disassociate the fear from it.
Well, okay, do you remember, at the festivals growing up, you got, like Cherry Blossom, for example, they always had that little tiny dragon roller coaster.
Oh, yeah, the caterpillar coaster?
Yes. When I was a kid, I was afraid of the little dragon roller coaster. That's how scared I was of coasters.
Yeah, that's another interesting one too. Talk about those fairs, fun houses. You ever go to a fun house and did that ever scare you?
It didn't scare. It was disorienting, but it wasn't scary.
You know what's wild? As a little kid, I used to actually envision there was this big Taj Mahal looking fun house called Aladdin's Palace or something like that. I always envisioned living in a place like that where it's just this massive Taj Mahal as a kid. I wasn't scared of it. I loved it. I was just like, this is so cool. Going through the different rooms and the mirrors and everything. I was like, this is great. I think it was in Ocean City they had it the one year. It was really neat.
I remember we went, I can't even remember where this was, but me and one of my friends from middle school, we were at this fun house and we were trying to figure out a way out, and she ran right to one of the mirrors, and it just made this big thud.
Yeah, bang.
It was so funny.
Oh, there's Stacy.
Yeah, she ran into it so hard, she fell back onto the ground.
Oof.
God, I wish I could remember where that was.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think, have we ever really been into like a haunted house or had like haunted experiences?
Well, I've been to, oh God, me and my friend Sarah from middle school, we went to, was it the haunted schoolhouse? Because, okay, in our area, they have the haunted schoolhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one we went to? But yeah, I've been to like a haunted house before, and it was kind of scary.
That things I'd probably be scared about too is like, okay, yeah, actually going to true haunted house. There are places that are like supposedly like, okay, for a good example around here in Mansfield, they have the Mansfield Reformatory where you can stay the night during Halloween. Oh, that would be, I would have all kinds of goosebumps all night. I'd be like, mm-mm.
I would do that just to experience it once. I would like
freaky.
to try that just once.
I think it'd be kind of surreal too, although it's a tourist trap now, going to Salem, Massachusetts on Halloween. I think that would be kind of like a very foreboding and surreal experience.
I would love, but again, on Halloween,
it's tourist trap.
Yes, tourist trap.
Hundreds of people that swarm there for Halloween.
We should still go there. Maybe not on Halloween, but close, like fall-ish.
I think I ended up. What was the name of that one play with the Salem witch trials? Is it Scarlet Letter?
Scarlet Letter.
Yeah, I ended up playing the Reverend Hawthorne in that one. Like, I denounce these proceedings.
Actually, one of my favorite shows is called Salem.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good show.
We definitely should check out Salem, Massachusetts sometime.
Okay, I'm trying to think of other... Man, we were talking about a whole bunch of scary stuff earlier. Now I, forgot all of them. Oh, that reminds me. One of my fears. Getting dementia.
Oh, yeah.
I have a very real fear of that because... I won't say where I work, but I work with...
You work in like a healthcare field.
I work in a healthcare facility.
And you see dementia on the regular pretty much.
Every day. I see it.
And just like the slow disintegration of a person's mental state, it's horrifying.
I mean, here's the thing. I adore the people that I work with. I love them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it terrifies me that could happen to me.
It's awe-striking in a lot of ways where you're just like, oh my God. Where you just see a person of complete mental faculties are there 1 year and within 6 months to a year, they're just a completely different person. And that's what happened to my grandfather because he had dementia too.
Yeah.
And you just see the slow disintegration. Actually, he became abusive too, which is very scary.
But just seeing, and I know this kind of branches off along the same topic because I see it a lot on social media, people just have a fear of aging in general.
Yeah, there is that. Especially, I think Gen Z has a big fear of aging.
Yes.
They're horrified.
I mean, I can see it from both sides, but these people are terrified of turning 30, which okay.
It's not as scary as you think, people. So.
No, I'm more afraid of what can happen to you when you're very old.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, the dementia or other disease processes that can happen to you as you get older. Mm-hmm. But yeah, these younger people that are oh my God, I'm turning 30's old. Oh my God. It's really?
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling that'll probably be the same mentality you have when you hit 40 and 50 and 60.
Here's 40's not old.
Yeah. To some people it is. Like I said, to me, I always had the mentality when you hit 35, you're middle-aged. Because I always thought the average lifespan is to at least 70 for the most part for a lot of people.
Well, here's the weird thing for me, and I think it's because I work with people who are older, 80s, 90s. I've had people over 100.
Mm-hmm.
To me,
middle ages in the 40s.
But people that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, that's not old to me. But you have people younger generations that are terrified of their 30s and 40s, and I'm
I think it's all a mental thing too, because honestly, I feel that affects your own physiology as well. Because if you think a certain age is old. Yeah. You'll begin to age yourself in a lot of ways because your body is reciprocating what your mind is thinking. So with Gen Z, they're almost kind of cursing themselves in a way because they're constantly thinking, I'm old, I'm getting old, I'm so old,
I mean,
blah, blah.
Don't get me wrong. I have my moments where I'm oh my God, am I getting gray hair? Oh my God, am I getting wrinkles? I need Botox, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, literally, there are some people that are just terrified.
Yeah, they're terrified of aging. That is their primal fear in a lot of ways.
There's somebody I met, or I know in real life, at a restaurant nearby. She's one of the waitresses there, and she was complaining about how she's I'm 21 years old, and I've done nothing with my life. And I'm girl, you're only 21.
Right.
But the way she was talking, it's she's her life was already over. Mm-hmm. And I'm be for fucking real. You're only 21.
Right.
But yeah, that's a big fear for a lot of people.
Well, once again, that goes along the fear with people trying to make a name for themselves and doing something, and the fear of not living up to one's potential.
Yeah.
And self-actualization is another thing that people really don't think about, but I think want to achieve is fulfill your life's purpose? What are you here for? And like I said, it all depends on the person. So if a person really wants to aspire to like, be recognized in some type of thing, I mean, that's their call.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you achieve what you're looking for or not, I mean, it's completely up to you in the long run.
Well, I think sometimes too, there's like a fear of missing out, FOMO.
Yes.
We were talking about FOMO earlier too.
Mm-hmm. Which honestly, I think I get more of the opposite, called JOMO, joy of missing out, in a lot of ways. Where it's kind of like, yeah, I'm glad I missed out on that, because sometimes people who jump in, or have the fear of missing out, sometimes it puts you in very precarious situations. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and like, because some people when they're younger, they're like, I don't want to miss out on this. I don't want to miss out on this. Like, I'm glad I did.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Well, it's kind of like, okay, do you think people had JOMO when they missed out on getting their ticket on the Titanic?
Yeah.
So, yeah, just my mentality here.
But the whole thing, I think that's maybe an irrational fear people have is like getting older. I mean, but like I said, though, I do see like genuinely being afraid of like dementia or other diseases you could get as you get older.
This is getting to be a very personal one here, but I think a big fear with a lot of people, especially this was true of myself too, is disappointing parents or guardians in a way. Of not living up to parents' expectations or standards. And that is a very universal fear with a lot of people, because they're too afraid to speak out for themselves. Because they're like, well, my parents would never steer me wrong. They're trying to look out for my best interest, when really you're just viewed upon them as basically an extension of themselves. Mm-hmm. Like they're mini-me. Like, oh, they think like I do. Like I know what's best for them and they know it too. But really they're just projecting their own mentality upon you. Yeah,
because there's a lot of parents that don't realize that your child is their own person, and at some point they're going to have their own thoughts and feelings and opinions on things.
Yep. To be able to grow and be able to form themselves as a person. And if you're in such a suffocating environment where you're only forced to think in only certain ways that the parents want you to think, it's going to stunt your growth. And more times than not, you'll end up building resentment against them. And like I said, for good reason. I mean, because they're basically holding you back in a lot of ways. And that was a rough lesson for me to learn throughout my 20s and everything as well.
Well, you still struggle with some of that sometimes.
Yeah, because once again, you're always, I think internally, you always want to try and get your parents' approval in a lot of ways, or try to get recognized for the good you do. But if you got parents that are just, constantly pitting you against others and putting you down, or never acknowledging your achievements is a huge thing too. That can really eat it away at a person's self-confidence in themselves.
Well, that could cause fear and anxiety well into adulthood. Mm-hmm. Well into adulthood.
Yep, and that's a thing I think that's very universal with a lot of people out there, because they're too afraid to step toe out of line, because oh gosh, what will my parents think? What will my friends think? What will they think? What will they do? They won't look at me the same way. I'll lose my friends. I'll lose my family. I'll be disowned. I'll be discarded. And in a lot of ways, I was basically kind of cast out from the family after events in the past, and frankly, it became very liberating in a way, because I no longer had to chase that approval anymore, where it's kind of okay, nothing I ever do is going to amount to their acceptance in things, and I need to start living for me and looking out for my best interest, because no one else will. So look out for number one.
Well, I do.
Yeah. But I'm talking about parental figures or guardian figures that will never be, basically impressed or accept you for what you are, or your achievements for what they are. Once again, said I could go for a doctorate in something, or become this, multimillionaire owner of a company, and it still wouldn't measure up to other people's expectations with them. And you have to realize, once again, you're not living for them. You're living for you. So, and that is a big fear, I feel with a lot of people. Not just, like I said, with myself for the longest time.
Well, that kind of spins off too, a lot of people in general, myself included, in some ways, are afraid of doing things, or afraid of what other people think of them.
Correct.
Fear
of the peer pressure.
Well, I mean, for me, in a way, I have this fear. I don't know if it's an irrational fear. I mean, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know. But I'm just always afraid that this is gonna sound so dumb. I'm afraid that just people in general don't like me. I've always had this fear that even in friend settings, or just at work or at school, it's just overall that people don't like me.
Yep.
And I don't know why. I've always been that way. Because I don't know.
Once again, you're trying to seek validation from everybody's approval. You're trying to, in a lot of ways, we tend to be people pleasers. So you want to try to make sure that we're very likable, blah, blah, blah. And that can be a recipe for disaster because there's some narcissists out there that will take advantage of that and spot that weakness a mile away, and they'll take you for a ride.
But I mean, I guess it's kind of gotten a little bit better as I've gotten older because it's like, oh, I don't care what they think. But then at the same time, I'm like, oh, did I do this? Like, I'm always worried or scared that I said the wrong thing. I did the wrong thing. I said too much, or I'm annoying. You know, that's. I
think that's a very human emotion that a lot of people end up having too, because most people you have to realize in life are worried about themselves and how they look in things. And I try to recall like certain moments back even in grade school or like all throughout college where people had embarrassing moments like in front of large groups of people. And I really have a tricky time trying to recall anything that where other people were embarrassed because you're too busy thinking about yourself and, you know, as you go about your daily life, where other people, if they have a mess up or something like that, it eats away and becomes part of their life story. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened so many years ago. Nobody thinks twice about it. They really don't. So in a way, that's very kind of freeing in a way. Where it's like, even if you feel like you look like a complete, you know, jackass at times, it's like.
But I don't know why I have that. It's just, I don't know. I've always had that.
No.
That's a fear of mine, I guess.
But like I said, I think it's pretty universal in a lot of ways, too.
I feel like a lot of people, you know, feel that way.
The fear of not being accepted or being accepted into a group.
And I don't know if that's because I was an only child or I've never really had like a large friend group.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. With social interactions and everything.
I don't know. Not to be Debbie Downer. Womp, womp, womp.
Yeah. Do you have a fear of anything relating to animals?
Not really.
Yeah.
Even though I've been bitten by a pig before. Mm-hmm. I do have a slight hesitation with pigs now.
I mean, that's understandable because that was a traumatic experience for you.
If you think about it, I could have had my finger completely bitten off.
Yeah, by a wild.
Completely.
That's one thing. People throughout history, be very cautious around boars and very large pigs. They are very aggressive things.
See, like my dumb ass didn't even think about that. I'm like, oh, it's a cute pig. Right. And then, chomp my finger, which I still have the scar to this day from being bit by a pig.
Yep.
But seriously, I could have lost my finger. I literally could have lost my finger.
See, your experience with the pig in your finger is kind of like me with that little erosion barrier over at Madeira Beach, where I was usually trapped on that thing and bleeding when I was a child.
I mean, I'm not afraid of pigs.
Yeah. I'm not afraid to go back on the water.
Yeah, but I do have a hesitation.
With against bigger pigs.
Yes.
Like little piglets, I think you're fine.
Like little piglets, yeah, that's one thing. But if I see a big giant pig, I'm like, I will admire you from a distance. You're very cute. I will not touch you.
I mean, I will say this from working, I've been all over the place as far as like jobs and everything. I've got quite the resume, quite interesting. But for a while, I actually worked as a postman. And one big thing I realized, they have very extensive training too. If you ever get a chance to go through there, like it's about almost like a full month of training, very, very well executed. They talk about like defensive driving, and then they also talk about like defense of your person. And they always make you carry pepper spray with you for one reason in particular at the post office: dogs.
Yeah,
that is a huge problem in the postal industry is dog attacks.
Well, didn't they tell you that if there's a house with a dog that's dangerous, like you cannot deliver mail there?
Correct. If the door is wide open, like the front door is wide open, or like if there's a screen door there and the main door is kind of open, you're allowed to bypass that house just for your own like self-preservation. And usually there's actually a sticker system too where they have a yellow paw pad sticker they'll stick on the previous house's mailbox to warn the postal worker at the next house will be marked with an orange paw pad that like this is an like aggressive dog house. So the yellow kind of forewarns you, watch out for the next house. And then that next house actually has the orange paw pad, and that lets you know, hey, beware, there's an aggressive dog here. And during my training route the one time, there was one aggressive dog, came out of nowhere, unleashed. He was charging right at my trainer. I'm like, oh my God. And you got to learn that, like, there's a huge percentage of, like, the postal service workers that are knocked out because of dog bites.
Yeah, I mean, I had a coworker at one time. She was terrified of dogs because as a kid, she got attacked by a dog. And she was terrified of them. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember sometimes people would bring their dogs into work to see the patients. Mm-hmm. And, like, she would literally have to go hide. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember I had a therapy dog come in one time, and it was a very gentle, older dog. Mm-hmm. She had to leave the unit because she was terrified. Mm-hmm. She's like, I don't care how gentle it is. I don't want to be anywhere near it. She had to leave the unit and wait until the dog was gone.
From a past traumatic experience for her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, terrified.
No, I understand that because I've seen those aggressive dogs before that just get unleashed and are charging at you full bore. That's a horrifying spot to be in. You're just sitting there going, oh, my God. So in that situation, they tell us you're supposed to you got a mailbag, just surrender the mailbag. If there's mail inside, doesn't matter. You're saving yourself in a lot of ways. Then you bring out the pepper spray, which sometimes might work, sometimes might not. So it's kind of just depends on the situation type of deal.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's freaky. So also one of the main reasons that I ended up not staying around for that one. So
yeah, I don't blame you for that.
That and a lot of other reasons too. So people who've experienced some type of traumatic experience in the past because of like a dog situation. Because I remember my parents had a golden retriever named Max who's chained outside to a post during storms for the first 3 years of his life.
Yeah.
And I was sitting on his dog bone one day and he was growling at me and he actually like attacked me and actually sliced off a part of my finger. That was wild. So for a while I was very reluctant to like kind of like pet dogs for a while. But no, I love dogs. They're so nice. But yeah, I did have like kind of a moment like that. But I can see where people who've had traumatic experience in the past don't get over that fear.
Yeah, like I said, like my coworker, I mean, literally, I would have to tell her days in advance, like, hey, just so you know, so-and-so's bringing their dog. Or sometimes families would just bring their dogs just to visit, And if she didn't know about it, she would. I remember one time I felt so bad. She literally took off running down the hallway because somebody brought their dog in.
Okay, one thing, like, going along those lines, too, with the show Maury, like, are those people actually afraid of the things they say they're afraid of? Like,
that whole thing was so...
Carol is afraid of peaches.
And they bring out a whole platter of peaches.
Platter of peaches. She, like, freaks out, and then he's afraid
Sally's afraid of cotton balls. Brings out a whole thing of cotton balls.
And they're freaking out, like, oh, my God! Running to the next room. I feel like
they always run backstage.
Yeah, I feel like that's just...
It's all completely like...
Yeah.
I mean, people do have genuine phobias and fears of certain things, but yeah, more, she's afraid of tinfoil. Here's some tinfoil.
Ah! And that's, once again, exposure, but they do it for, like, a comedic laugh.
Yes.
You have to wonder if these people, like, are they actually afraid of these things? I highly doubt it.
I mean, they could be, but it's very much embellished for TV.
Playing up to the camera. Yep. I've always kind of felt that way with those type of things.
Okay, you want to hear a terrible story that we did? So this was back in marching band. And there was this one girl. A lot of people didn't really particularly like her because she was kind of annoying. Mm-hmm. She was terrified of hair. Just like loose strands of hair. Mm-hmm. So I remember a whole bunch of us, and this sounds terrible now. A whole bunch of us, a lot of us girls had our hairbrushes in our purse. A couple of the guys were like, oh, we need your hair. We need your hair. So, this big thing of hair. And they put it in her clarinet case.
Oh, no.
So when she opened her clarinet case...
jumped to the roof.
Oh, my God. Looking back on it, that was a really horrible thing to do.
Oh, yeah. Kids are mean.
She literally, like, opened it, screamed, and her clarinet pieces went flying everywhere because there was this big, giant ball of hair in her clarinet case. Mm. Oh, I feel horrible saying that now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, like, there were probably, like, 10 people that we got. I mean, it was a huge ball of hair.
Playing on our fears. But traumatic experience of the past. Remember my dad actually talked about a few, too, where, like, he actually got hit by a car back in his, like, high school years. You know about that?
I vaguely remember you telling me about this.
He was basically traveling down the road.
Doesn't he have a scar on his head from it?
I think so, yeah. Basically, he was just like, after he was struck, he was just kind of like floating in the air, and it said it felt like at least a half hour going by in slow motion. And then he came back, like, he wandered back into his house, just face bleeding and everything. I guess Grandma was, like, screaming.
Did they ever catch the person who hit him?
Nope, just hit and run type of deal. And basically, my grandpa just talked to my dad the whole time to the hospital just to prevent my dad from going into shock. And he just talked to him. And my dad still credits Grandpa for saving his life from that because he basically kept him from going into shock by constantly asking, That's kind of like the Boy Scouts taught me, too. Like, when someone drowns, you're supposed to ask them if they want a glass of water.
Be like, what?
Yeah, exactly, because it gets thought-provoking, so it prevents a person from going into shock. Like, why is this person asking me for a glass of water? I nearly drowned. What are you talking about? But no, you're supposed to do that just, keep a person thinking, keep a person talking, It's kind of like, technical 101.
Interesting.
Always, yep. So it keeps a person, cognitively there, like, hey, stay with me type of thing. Very smart. But yeah, my dad, basically got all stitched up and still has that scar from all that experience from way back when. It was wild. But doesn't have a fear of cars that much.
I was going to ask, is he afraid of, like, do you have any fears after that?
Nope.
Well, I remember my cousin got in a pretty bad car accident. When I forget if we were still in high school or if it was after high school, a little bit after high school. But I remember she was afraid to be in a car for a little while after it happened because I think she wasn't driving, but just the person she was with, I think went airborne and crashed into someone's house.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That actually happened to my grandparents at one time.
Yeah, so she was afraid to drive for a while. And I remember one time I was driving us somewhere and she was like clutching onto the door because it was shortly after it happened. Because she, not because I'm a crazy driver,
yeah.
no, because I think she was just scared.
It was a reaction from her trauma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all too. That's normal. So that happens. But have you ever had like traumatic experiences that have, I mean, obviously we talked about the pig thing, but have you ever had any more that have been similar like that? Which caused you to like, can I have either fear or irrational fear of anything? We kind of touched on heights a little bit, because I definitely think I have a little bit of fear of heights. How about darkness? Fear of the darkness?
I'm not really super afraid of the dark.
Nah, but you're kind of scared of going out to like parks and stuff like that late at night.
Well, I mean, I have a fear. Yeah, I mean, I don't like to go places alone, especially at night. I mean, because I don't want to get kidnapped and,
right,
all
that stuff.
I mean, because I do have a fear. I mean, I love hiking and being outside and going to nature trails and nature preserves, but you see all these stories about, women getting abducted, raped, murdered, kidnapped, on these hiking trails. And it's like, well,
yeah, freaky.
So as much as I love to hike and stuff, I'm very reluctant and scared to go by myself to certain places.
I think that's completely, understandable.
Or even just, but going places at night alone, even like sometimes I'm reluctant to go, like, even if it's just like a Target or something, if it's dark, I don't want to go by myself.
Yep. Understandable.
And then sometimes too, I'm even afraid to use like Uber or Lyft, because
you've heard of the stories.
Yeah. I mean, what happens if you get a crazy Uber or Lyft driver, like
locks the doors and then off you go.
So, I mean, I know, again, that could be, I mean, there's plenty of great Uber drivers that could be irrational fear, but I mean, I've never used an Uber for that reason.
Right. So, and I think you're in a pretty good grouping, because there's a lot of people that probably have that same fear. So, yeah, I haven't used the Uber either. So, I've always felt more comfortable with me behind the controls of, driving anywhere I want to go.
Yeah. But no, I do. I kind of have, I expect going places by myself, especially as a woman, like you just don't know what could happen.
I think that's smart though. But once again, as a guy going out to like places that are dark in the middle of the night, like I don't know if I'd ever be like want to go out to a park in the middle of the night either.
Oh no,
freaky.
But I'm talking about, okay, like we're out somewhere at night, like we're at a store at night. I don't worry about anything. Like I'm walking through the store, we're out in the parking lot, I don't worry about anything. But if I'm by myself and it's dark and it's nighttime, I'm like looking around like constantly.
And that's another fear with people too, is the fear of being alone. That's a very scary one for a lot of people.
Do you mean being alone in general, or just like?
It could be like multifaceted there. So it could be a person just kind of like being by themselves, or, just feeling lonely. How about being, in the middle of the woods in the dark? Almost like Slender Man type thing.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Well, I've been with I remember one time it was me and my dad and my cousin JD. We went to Silver Creek to walk. And it was light out when we were walking, but then I remember the more we walked, and then we walked to the one trail, it got so like spooky, because even though it was still kind of light outside, there's all this tree cover, so you're like walking and it's dark, and it was actually kind of scary. Like, ooh.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you were talking about earlier how you kind of have a little bit of tryptophobia.
Yeah, trypophobia.
Is that what it's called?
Oh, like
with all the holes.
Like it makes your skin crawl a little bit. Yeah, just staring at like a thing, kind of like a lotus blossom before it blooms.
Oh yeah, the lotus pods. Yeah, those are a little bit weird.
Or you just see like it's a bunch of holes in somebody. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's weird. Somebody or some object.
It seems like a lot of people have that.
Yeah. To me, it's not a fear. It's more of an unsettling feeling.
Yeah.
Where it kind of makes your skin crawl. It's like, ugh. So, yeah, that's weird. AI can be a bit unsettling as well. Like when you ever see the generated images of people where it's almost like perfect symmetry. You can tell something's not quite right there, and it just feels a little off.
Well, sorry, speaking of phobias, because you mentioned tryptophobia, one of my coworkers, I can't remember the term for it, but she has a phobia of vomiting.
Really?
Like, I am talking about like an actual emetophobia. But it's like a legit phobia. Like, she has like all kinds of like anti-nausea. Anywhere she goes, she in her purse, she has like anti-nausea medications, Pepto. There are certain things she won't eat. She's like constantly checking the expiration dates on things, like, because she's terrified of vomiting.
Weird.
Yes, it's an actual phobia. Like, she is terrified. Okay, there was one time where we had a pretty bad gastro bug going around at work, like in diarrhea and vomiting. She literally called off work for a week
Because she was so scared.
because she was legit, like, has a legit phobia of vomiting.
Well, you know people, too, that are, like, germaphobes that have to wear the plastic gloves anywhere they go. I've seen them, like, go through, like, checkout lines at Walmart and Target. Like, they'll wear the plastic gloves. Like, they have their wallet covered in, like, a plastic case.
Yeah.
Where they're overly obsessed about, diseases or germs on anything.
Yeah.
So I always feel kind of like, a little bit of pity towards people like that. Because it's just like, oh, my gosh. Like, the amount of overthinking they probably do in a given day is probably horrifying.
I mean, I know there's some people who have obsessive compulsive disorder who... A lot of them, like, that's one of their, the one host, oh my God, the one host of that Nickelodeon show.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a germaphobe.
And Howie Mandel apparently has
That's
OCD.
who I was thinking of,
and
Howie
he's
Mandel.
and he's very like, I guess he won't like touch people, or he won't shake their hand, or
He's extremely sanitary. Well, on the topic of game show hosts and stuff like that, one in particular who's famous for his podcasting too, Joe Rogan, he was the host of Fear Factor.
Oh God, Fear Factor.
That was an interesting phenomenon of a show, which apparently, looking at like what a bunch of documentaries from like former contestants, they never really gave like true consent to all the stuff that they were subjected to, and it's freaky. Like taking a bath with a bunch of spiders or worms or something.
Heck no.
It was like, oh my God.
I like bugs, but again, like, okay, like I said, I don't mind spiders so much anymore, but if I had to bathe in a tub full of them,
right?
No.
Well, remember for a while, and they had this, like, a Fear Factor live show at Universal Studios in Florida. Never went to it. Don't think I ever wanted to, where they, like, I don't know, they pick out random people in the audience to basically experience, like, exposure to their fears type of thing. And no thanks. Like, having tarantulas crawl on you and go into a snake pit or something.
Okay, that is one thing I want to do. That's on my bucket list. I want to hold a tarantula. Just once.
I don't think they're as intimidating as you think. They're probably very, like, woolly.
They're fuzzy, but that's because I've always been so afraid of them. But I'm like, I just once. I want to hold a tarantula.
They have venom, but, like, okay, do they bite?
Certain ones do.
Okay. I've always kind of thought, like, bats, like, because the stereotype with vampire bats. Blah,
they're
blah.
so sweet.
Like, okay, most bats, they go after insects and fruit.
They eat fruit.
Yeah. But there are certain types of vampire
bats. There are
bats
actual vampire bats, but they eat, like, animals.
Yeah, I was going to say they go after, like, horses and rabbits and stuff like that.
But bats are so sweet.
Right. But I tell you what, the ones that you see with, like, they're 2 feet long and have, like, a 6-foot wingspan. It's like the flying fox bat. I think
those are so cool.
They're freaky looking.
Oh, I think they're cool.
Furry. I'm like, what the heck? You look over and it's just like, ugh. They're big, like,
I want to hug them. Just wrap their wings around me.
Their wings almost look like, almost like nylon or some type of, like, rubbery material. It's weird. But, like, their wingspans are huge. It's like, oh, my God. So, yeah, bats are kind of freaky.
Oh, no, I love bats.
Yeah. They're good for pest control, though.
And
they're federally protected, too.
We tried to put a bat house in our backyard, but I think we put it in, like, the wrong location.
So, when you put a bat house in, number one, remember that they're federally protected. So, once you put a bat house up, you can't really remove it because it's kind of like, federal law. Because if you install a bat house, you're basically, like, trying to house, like, a federally protected creature.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to put it in a place where it's going to get a lot of sunlight. It's kind of like up on a high post where it's away from, like, predators and everything. But when you install a bat house out there, you want to make sure we put it inside of the bed of a tree, but it's like far too shady. It won't be warm at all during the winter. And it just turned out to be kind of a big dud.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we get any bats in there. But some people are deathly afraid of bats.
Well, okay, so going back to what I was talking about with, like, the fear of public speaking and, like, people not liking me, which, God, when I say that, it sounds so stupid. But, like, social anxiety, like, and if, thinking back on, like, stuff I've missed out. Like, I remember when I was in college, it was for one of my online classes. And obviously, like, my social anxiety's gotten a lot better. But I remember we would have to, I think it was for health counseling. And we had to record ourselves counseling somebody. You know, that was what we were supposed to do. And we were supposed to do like 5 or 6 of them. I was so scared to record myself and send it to my class that I didn't do the assignment.
Actually.
And the sad thing is I still passed the class, but I think I ended up either getting like a B- or a C+ because I didn't do those assignments because I was literally terrified to have my class watch. Because I remember I was going to ask you, because it was supposed to be you and you were counseling somebody. And I had these mini like role play type things you were supposed to do. Yeah, I was so terrified to record myself and send it to the class that I just didn't do it. I did not do it.
Along those similar lines with classes too, the one thing I always was kind of like a pet peeve of mine was giving verbal constructive criticism to like other group members in like a group project. That was like nails on a chalkboard for me, where you're basically just like poking holes. Like someone creates a paper or something like that, and you're supposed to go through the fine-tooth comb and be like, well, you suck here, you suck there, you need to do better here and there. And like, to me, that's just like, oh, you're basically just like ripping somebody's like work apart.
Or I remember, oh my God, I was so afraid to present it was for a science project. I was so afraid to present. I convinced my teacher that I already presented.
It's actually brilliant,
because I remember it was after class and he was looking at me and he's like, Ashley, have you presented yet? And I'm like, oh yeah, I went the first day. And my friend in class, she knew I was scared to present. And she's like, yeah, she went the first day. And I think I turned in the paper that I did along with my presentation to him because you had to turn a paper in with,
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up getting, a decent grade and I never had to present.
Nice.
And the funny thing is, nobody in the class said anything. Either, I don't know if they didn't care or if they knew I was shy. And I don't know. I did have some assholes in that class. But yeah, and then there was, God, I'm remembering all this now. Another group project, it was me and 2 other guys. We got paired together. And I was in charge of doing the PowerPoint, and I would have to present the PowerPoint. I brought the disc in, put it in. I never put the presentation on there. I just kept telling my teacher, yeah, I don't know what's wrong. I can't get it to come up. I can't get it to come up.
Brilliant.
So then the other guy finished the presentation, and I never had to present the PowerPoint.
There you go.
But looking back at that, like, that's how scared I was. And oh my God. What an idiot I was.
One thing I remember, there's actually a couple of stories I had. Well, I think it's kind of karma coming full circle because during my grade school years, there was a lot of times where I'd get involved with group projects and I would do very minimal work on a lot of things. So Kim Spade could probably tell you stories because we were involved in a group project and she did like a lot of the legwork and still kind of holds that grudge against me, which is fair. But then I got a sweet taste of karma because when I went to college for like my college writing classes, my groups did absolutely nothing. And I literally had to put the presentation together, had to do all the research, had to literally do everything.
That happened to me more than once.
Yes, I had that happen just a couple of times throughout my college years, and I'm just like, I can't help but feel like this is karma coming full circle. So I literally had to eat a green one for that. Well,
here's the thing with that PowerPoint thing I was telling you about. I still did the PowerPoint, and I just sent it to the teacher.
Yeah.
And I never ended up having to present. I mean, I still did it.
One thing I did do, though, I did end up like ratting out my other group members back in college because I'm just like, they did absolutely nothing. They were just a bunch of like, because we got paired in like random sequential order. Like the teacher will go down through like an alphabetical list and be like, okay, you're group 1, you're group 2, 3, and 4. And I was like group 4 because my name's so high. And everybody who was a 4 basically was kind of like a dud in college. And yeah, basically, I was the only smart one there that was like doing all the legwork and putting this together. And I put together, or put this note at the very end of the presentation, turn it in. I'm just like, I did everything. Nobody in my group like even bothered. Like they just showed up for class, basically signed the attendance sheet, and then just basically, cashed out. And I'm just like, I literally did all the research, put the papers together, put the presentation together, presented everything, and they just sat there and like put their feet up. I'm just like, and the teacher's like, I appreciate your honesty. Great work, Eric. And God nay. Nice. trying to think of some of the other things.
Oh
too.
my God, I just remembered another thing I did in college. I pretended that I lost my voice, and I was very convincing. So I pretended that I lost my voice so I wouldn't have to finish my presentation. Oh my God.
There was a time where I really did want to go to school one day, and we lived out in the country, and there was like a bunch of pine trees on the way up to like the bus stop. I remember like I saw the bus like
The story kills me.
came over the top of the crest of the hill, and I just like I saw him like, oh, and I dove out of the way over into a ditch and kind of rolled underneath one of the trees, watched the bus go by, and I was just like, oh, I guess I missed school today, and just kind of went back home. Mom was furious. I was just like, I missed the bus.
Did she still take you to school, or did you stay home?
It might have been one of those things where I think she had to work or had to leave early for work, and I basically had to call her and be like, yeah, I guess I just have to take today off of school. And yeah, I basically got off school that day, but she was furious. So yeah, that happened.
Well, we've kind of hopped all over the topic of different fears and phobias and whatnot.
And going down the rabbit hole of like different experiences we had from like our, educational years and everything.
Yeah.
So, and touched on a little bit of like, the fears and phobias of today with a lot of people and like overcoming things as you get older because you kind of get more exposure to things and, like roller coasters, for instance.
Yeah.
You begin to overcome all that stuff. So I hope this has been kind of a very enlightening podcast for everybody. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. And it all depends on the situation. Have a good one.
Goodbye.